Welcome back to WCCF Tech TV for another video game review. Today we have 1111 Memories Retold. Games have an undeniable fascination with war, and yet despite that, so few step away from the glory of multi-kills and frontline shooty bangs. Recent AAA titles have attempted it with Call of Duty World War II and Battlefield 1, but these still can't reconcile their poignant messages without the horrors of war with racking up a big kill streak over in the multiplayer. 1111 Memory Retold is a very different story. Instead of showing the glory of war, big explosions, and joyful victories, 1111 tells the story of a war in which there is no real victor, just people left behind and changed forever. It takes us through the tale of Harry and Kurt, two soldiers on opposing sides of the war, neither with any real personal reason to be there. The game has been developed by DigiArt with the legendary British filmmakers Aardman at the helm of the game's narrative and art design. Arden's experience with making impactful and entertaining stories shine through in 1111 Memories Retold, and the DigiArt staff that has worked on titles such as Valiant Hearts do a great job of bringing the story to life. Harry is a Canadian, pressured somewhat into the war to impress a girl and take photographs for a charismatic mayor of questionable morals. By going to war and taking pictures of soldiers on the front lines of battle, Harry will have his pictures in the newspaper and be able to turn with glorious tales from the battlefield. Kurt, meanwhile, is a German engineer, another man who doesn't much care for the war itself or the ideals for the nations that they were fighting for. Instead, he finds out his son has gone missing in the battle, and with little regard for his own life, or feelings of the family for that matter, he leaves behind. Kurt joins the army in hopes of finding his son. Neither man hates the other, and neither truly wants to fight in a war, which is why when an explosion traps the pair of them underground, they freeze, unable to battle. Instead, they learn to coexist, and despite the language barrier, they build a bond and friendship. The two protagonists and the premise are as important as any other aspect of this game because, of course, it's a narrative adventure. No, this isn't like Telltale's games, formulaic titles. Instead, it's a very linear story which flicks between Kurt and Harry's locations and stories. We hear the characters' inner monologues explaining their thoughts and feelings in given situations since they're unable to communicate with one another. Kurt's monologue is written as a letter to his wife, Katrin, and sometimes his daughter, Lucy, while Harry's is as if he's talking to the girl he's smitten with back home. Most of the game, yes, is very linear with some simplistic puzzles to complete and items to collect along the way. The items you'll find will give you documents and information about the war, how things were, what equipment was used, and more. It's an interesting insight into a time far removed from our own. The most striking thing about 1111 Memories Retold is the art style. Amazing attention to detail has been put into creating a unique filter or shader effect that transforms the 3D world you explore into an oil painting. At first glance, it's an impressive effect with the world rendering in shocking detail, and in moments where fires rise up from the ground and the sun reflects off hot surfaces, 1111 truly looks wonderful and distinct in its own way from other games. But it's the smaller details that struck me. In order to achieve the oil painting effect, attention has to be drawn to the way brushstrokes appear on surfaces. Importantly, the size and direction of brushstrokes differ depending on the width of a surface, the length, and a variety of other factors. It's an effect that's easy to ignore, but if it's done incorrectly, it would have been noticeable. Great effort has been put into creating the perfect presentation, and that's why the protagonist Harry, who has a camera almost every moment, is ripe for screenshot taking. I'm incredibly impressed by how much I enjoyed 1111 Memories Retold. It tells a wonderful story, but it feels a little bottom heavy. What I mean by that is much of what you do for the first two of the game's 3 parts is incredibly linear. No real decisions are to be made other than some small dialogue choices that don't seem to have an impact on anything. All the real narrative weight the game carries and the conflicting decisions the player must make happen at the end. I'm torn on this point. On one hand, the first 2 parts of the game and the hours you spend experiencing them are necessary for the finale to carry in the weight that it does. On the other hand, it almost felt like the game was ending just as it truly begun. Despite the minor qualms though, I'm thoroughly impressed with 1111 Memories Retold. It's the kind of game that isn't trying to replicate games that have come before. It's just telling a unique story about a war that had no glory for anyone in the end, just lifelong wounds.